All right, welcome everybody. Today we have a very special live training, live AMA, Ask Me Anything webinar, and we're going to learn all of the ins and outs of sourcing from India. I'm thrilled to have three special guests with us here today. And we have Meghla Bhardwaj, Margaret Jolly, and CJ Holm. So welcome guys. Great to see you.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Gary. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. So I know that sourcing from India it's a very hot and interesting topic, and that there's many questions that people have. So I couldn't think of anyone better than Meghla, Mark, and CJ to give you three different perspectives sourcing from India. And sourcing from India, it is one of the keys, I feel, for certain products and certain sellers to be successful. So you guys, everybody joining live today, will have an opportunity to ask questions. And we had over 60 pre-submitted questions, and we also have those questions prepared as well. All right. And then the replay will be available for everyone that signs up in case you are not able to stay for the complete webinar. And if you guys do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we'll get to them as we go through the webinar. All right. So as we have some more people coming in, first off, for everybody joining us live, if you can please let us know where you're joining us from, and also, if you can just let us know where you're joining us from. All right. So first off, I'd like to introduce Meghla Bhardwaj. Meghla has over 20 years experience in the Asia sourcing industry. She's visited hundreds of factories, dozens of trade shows. It really has a deep understanding of the whole manufacturing and sourcing process. And she's a real expert when it comes to sourcing from India. I think she is the go-to resource. I can't think of anybody else to have to give you all of the ins and outs about sourcing from India. So I think this is a golden opportunity, guys. And then together with her partners, Mark and Kevin, she organizes sourcing trips to India and Vietnam. And she's also co-founder of India Sourcing Network. And I've actually attended India sourcing trip on their very first run in 2019. So it is a great experience. We'll share a little bit more about that at the end. Okay. Next, I also like to introduce Margaret Jolly. Margaret is a very successful and experienced Amazon seller, firsthand knowledge of the day-to-day challenges faced by online sellers. She's traveled extensively through Vietnam, India, and China, visiting many factories and trade shows. So she's an actual practitioner. So she's selling, and she's dealt with many of the issues, the questions that you guys had. So I think that she's also a very golden resource that you can use to get some of your questions answered today. Okay, and then also I'd like to welcome CJ Holm. CJ lives in New York. She has 20 years retail experience in the housewares and home goods category. She's been selling on eBay for 24 years, 3 years on Etsy, and 3 years on Amazon. And then she joined India sourcing trip in October 2022, really smitten by the products she saw. And she's been buying products from India and her brand since then. So I think she also has a unique, fresh perspective, having started sourcing from India recently for her e-commerce brand. All right. So I'd like to quickly also give some shout outs to the people joining us live. Welcome Anne from the Gold Coast. Welcome Renee from New Jersey. Welcome, I believe it's Chuti Day from Hong Kong. And Amit from Toronto, Canada. So we have a worldwide audience today. Welcome, guys. So again, this is a live Ask Me Anything format webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Okay, so to get started, guys, as everybody knows, the whole world is changing faster and faster, it seems, every month. And especially when it comes to sourcing and the different countries, we're moving away from the pandemic, but there's all these economic issues, and there's the whole AI experience affecting everything everywhere at once. So I wanted to just kind of get like the pulse of sourcing from India right now. So I'd like to ask, how is the situation sourcing from India, and what has changed, let's say, since the last 6 to 12 months to today? Who'd like to start that off?
Well, I can start off with that, Gary, because I've I am in India and I sort of keep a very close eye on developments now. So I think, as you mentioned, Gary, I've been in the Asia sourcing industry for 20 years. I've literally seen the rise of China. I lived in China for 10 years, starting from 2006. And I've seen so much rapid growth in China at that time. And I see the same type of rapid growth over here in India at this time. This is sort of the most dynamic time that I have ever seen in the history of sourcing or manufacturing in India. There's just so much going on, in all fronts. So a couple of things that I want to highlight. First of all, the electronics industries are growing really fast. And what's happening currently is a lot of the top tier companies are setting up factories in India, the Apples and Xiaomi's and, all of the Samsungs. Those companies are setting up their factories in India in order to mostly cater to the domestic market, but also start to export. And because of that, the overall electronic supply chain is developing and becoming more strong. And gradually, we are seeing some tier 2 suppliers set up factories as well. So in the next 5 years, I feel that the electronics industry in India is going to be, very different from what it is today. It's going to rapidly evolve. There are going to be more tier 2 suppliers. So you're going to be able to source a lot of smaller, OEM products like you do from China today. Maybe at not that level because China is way ahead in terms of electronics production. Shenzhen itself has hundreds and thousands of factories. But so that's one industry that I see really growing very fast. Second, the government is emphasizing certain specific industries like toys. That's another category that's being emphasized. We're seeing a lot of investment in large toy production facilities, making traditional toys like dolls and, games and puzzles and things like that. So that's another very dynamic industry that is growing. Overall, I'm seeing a lot of investment in manufacturing and exports. We're also seeing a lot of different types of buyers coming to India to source. And, every day we receive emails and messages on India sourcing asking, okay, how can I source this product? And, so all different types of buyers, whether they are retailers, whether brands, Amazon sellers, auto parts. We got a couple of auto parts suppliers as well asking to source products from India. So I think a lot of people are looking for alternatives. That's what we're seeing, in our daily interactions with buyers, that they're looking for alternatives. They don't want to put all their eggs in one basket.
Excellent.
Mark, is there anything that you want to add?
No, I think you've covered that pretty well, Meghla.
As usual.
Excellent. Well, I think alternatives, that's a key trend we're seeing. There's been a shift sourcing away from China. And what are some of the, let's say, the advantages sourcing from India? Yeah, sorry, if you guys can please mute upon entry. What are some of the advantages, that you're seeing these, like the trend of buyers sourcing, shifting away from China? What are some of the advantages?
Mark, do you want to?
Yeah, look, I think probably one of the biggest advantages is the difference in the products. If you're sourcing from China, you go on Alibaba and the product you choose is usually there umpteen times, almost the same or exactly the same. You'll find with India, most suppliers, they might be making a vase, but every vase has a different twist to it. It can be the metal that it's used, the embellishments on it, the engraving. So you very seldom find the same product over and over on, Amazon or wherever you're selling, because people have to really search hard to find those products. It's not as easy to find. There's not the Alibaba with every single product on it, and a lot of the manufacturers don't have their products there. So I think that is probably one of the biggest advantages. And of course, you've got the handmade sort of spin to it, and all the I suppose helping. You can use things in your brand story, like donations back to a charity and things in India for selling the product. So there's a lot of spin-offs, I think, from sourcing from India in that respect. Does someone else want to add anything else there?
Communication's
Also
a big one too.
Yeah.
People in India learn English as a second language, and it's I've found that it's much easier to communicate with people in India than it is in China. And that's
Also-
huge. If you're talking about some, minor detail of your product.
Can you give an example based on your experience, CJ?
Well, I have a bad one from China. I had a product, it was actually a cloth drawstring bag that I was using as just to slip something in, a product that I actually source in the US. And I had placed 6 orders from this same factory in China. I'd only purchased it. I purchased it in 2 sizes, but always the same color, always the same logo. And I used to just tell her how many I needed and I'd get them. The last shipment I got a quantity of 2,000. The color was completely off. She couldn't understand, or was pretending to not understand, that there was a color difference. And I found that she just didn't care. And in India, I feel that people care about the relationship that they have with people that that are purchasing from them. And it was just sort of the last straw for me. And I just stopped sourcing from China altogether after that situation. So anyway.
Thank you for
Also, I
sharing
think
that.
production costs. So overall production costs in China have been increasing for the last 5-10 years. That's why a lot of the low-end production, in fact, has been moving out of China to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, for example, apparel, shoes, even Vietnam. Vietnam is upcoming as a very strong production center. But for certain products that are labor intensive, India can be a very good cost-effective alternative. Maybe for certain like plastic products and all, where China has got economies of scale, they produce in mass volumes, India cannot compete, in those products. But where labor is involved, India has a competitive advantage because now, of course, we have 1.4 billion people. We're the largest population in the world. So there's a lot of people over here, and labor is still very cheap. So overall, the minimum daily wage over here, or not daily wage, the minimum monthly wage over here is less than $200, which is much lower than what it is in China. So overall, cost of living is still quite low, and so that's why we're still able to have that those low wages.
Interesting. Okay. And in terms of the costs, there's also the tariffs that people sourcing from China to the US have to deal with, right? Can you share a little bit more about the differences in terms of tariffs, duties, etc.? Because that definitely has an impact on the cost.
Yeah, Margaret.
Yeah, look, we don't actually, coming out of India, there's no Trump tariff. So those of you who have been sourcing from China will probably find, it can be 25, 30% on products of tariff when it gets into the US. So that is virtually non-existent in India. And I find I've been sourcing from India now since 2017, and the highest tariff I've ever paid is 4%. Some of my products are 0 and some are 4. So it just depends on the use and the materials. So that is a big saving, compared to, 30%. I mean, it can kill your product. So, so I think that, that is, one of the great advantages of sourcing from India as well. It can save you a lot. And I've had people come to me and say, I've just got to stop sourcing from China. I want to save that tariff. That's my profit margin, because it is getting harder to make a good profit with all the fees increases and things that are happening. So you've got to look at the ways you can maximize your profit now.
Definitely. I mean, you have to pay attention to your numbers, right? And a lot of times people only consider the FOB cost, but you also have to consider the landed cost, right? So I think that is a big difference that sellers can enjoy sourcing away from China, especially. Okay, I know that I see a couple of questions in the chat already, and I wanted to first tackle like the number one question that we got. So we already talked a little bit about the advantages and a little bit about well, before we get to that, I mean, let's just look at both sides of the coin, guys. What are some of the disadvantages about sourcing from India that sellers may not be aware of?
Yeah, I think the biggest disadvantage is the limited product categories that are available. So for example, if you do want to do any electronics currently or plastics, those kinds of products are better sourced in China. So sometimes what sellers might do is that they might source some components from China, import them into India, and then do the assembly over here. So that's one, challenge. And then in, for certain products, the prices are much lower in China. So because China has economies of scale in so many different products, so in certain categories, you might find that, the prices are lower in China. And
what are some of those
variety?
What are some of those categories?
So let's say things like, if you want to do some specialized packaging that is, molded packaging or something, China is better for that. India does offer a lot of different packaging options, but if you want to do like very high end kind of packaging, that's better done in China. Plastics, again, better scale, better variety, better options in China. Electronics, also the same. Polyester materials in general, functional fabrics, high-end sports apparel, for example, those types of things. Again, China is the place to, source those items. There are factories in Vietnam that do a lot of polyester fabrics for apparel and general polyester fabrics, but most of the fabrics are actually imported from China. They just do the cutting and sewing in Vietnam. So China is really the only manufacturing hub for those kinds of materials. For something like cotton, for example, India has a monopoly, and there's a lot of organic cotton and other types of different natural materials. So anything that's natural materials, eco-friendly materials, India is a better option. And typically for man-made materials, plastics and polyester, China is a better option for Vietnam.
Excellent. There was a question talking about some products. Cheryl had a question. What about art supplies, acrylic paint, brushes, markers?
So there are some companies, again, this is not one of India's major categories, but yes, there are companies that do paints and markers. But you would get more variety in China. You'd get better, better prices and more variety in China for these categories, because this is a strong category from China. But if you do want to source from India, some people want to source from India on principle. And so if that's the case, then yes, there are suppliers available.
Okay. And another question from Chutide. I am selling leather wallet. Does India have the advantage over China?
Yes,
I think so.
Absolutely. Yeah. CJ, what did you see? Did you see any leather over there at the trade show?
I saw beautiful leather and a lot of different kinds of leather, thick, very, very thick, heavy leather, down to really, really soft, pliable leather, and everything in between. I saw salmon leather. Did you meet that gentleman that was at the e-commerce summit? He had salmon leather.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before. It was beautiful. So definitely, and they have their own manufacturing of leather, where they do their own tanning there. They do everything in India. They definitely have an advantage over China.
Yeah, there are a lot of cows in India, guys. So there's a lot of leather. You see the cows everywhere.
I thought cows were sacred in India.
Yeah, but then cows do die, right? They do die a natural death.
Okay.
Or get hit by a bus.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Let's take one more product question. Renee asks, I sell fashion jewelry and accessories. What is the advantage?
Oh, there are so many beautiful products, especially if you're looking at, there's of course costume jewelry, but if you're looking at semi-precious stones and other kinds of stones, there is such a huge variety of products available in Jaipur. That's the city where all of the fashion jewelry is manufactured. And in fact, we will be going to Jaipur during India sourcing trip in October. But yeah, jewelry is one of the biggest categories from here. Accessories, I'm not sure what exact accessories you're doing, but there are things like hats, caps, belts, scarves. There's a huge variety of silk scarves. That's one of India's specialties as well. And shawls, stoles.
Renee, if you'd like to unmute yourself, do you want to share a little bit more detail? Because that's a very broad category, jewelry accessories. Like if you can, if not, no worries. I mean, we can go over chat. Okay, it looks like Renee cannot. Okay, excellent. All right, so we covered several categories. So obviously India, I mean, not everything is available in India, but if you are looking for natural type products like leather, like cotton, eco-friendly, fashion jewelry, etc. I remember when I visited India, I mean, I just think of like, all the little like handmade type of, jewelry, earrings, necklaces, like a whole bunch of very ethnic, boho, all of these type of accessories, they're all available there. So I think those are some
And
of the
metal
big
and wooden
advantages.
products too.
Metal, wood.
That's right.
Marble, sandstone, soapstone, a lot of beautiful
Yes.
hand carved items. Think
Yes.
handicraft, think handicrafts when you think of India.
Yeah.
Right.
Renee
And the
says that
reason
she
India
sells
specializes
hats.
in,
Yeah.
okay, perfect. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Sorry.
those
Hats,
products are perfect in India.
scarves, belts, bags, etc.
A lot. They
I was
can
just
do
going to add,
beautiful
the
bags.
reason India specializes in these kinds of products is because there's a very rich history of handicraft production. And there are these clusters in different cities in India where there are skilled artisans that specialize in these crafts. So for example, there's the city of Moradabad where they produce a lot of metal and wooden products. And these skills have been passed down from generations. So they've been producing these metal products for hundreds of years. And hundreds of years ago, they were producing them for the kings and queens, who used to rule the country at that time. And what's happened now is that skill has been transferred from generation to generation. And there are exporters who are leveraging that skill set in order to export products that are suited to Western taste. So the products that you see that come out of India, they're not like, the traditional Indian kind of products. They're more suited to Western taste based on Western preferences in terms of design and, colors, etc.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Meghla, because I remember in China, there's like two different categories of products. There's products that are for the domestic Chinese market, and then there's products for the export market. And, typically like the shops, like let's say if you're in Shanghai, if it's like a women's like clothing boutique, they would really highlight, oh, this is export quality dresses, stuff like that. Like assumption it's a higher quality, so it sounds like India has that type of differentiation as well, right? Like with you Western like type of export quality. And it seems like we're seeing more of that in terms of the manufacturers now than before. But I mean, on the flip side, that may be something that you want to check with your suppliers, because for China, for sure, you want to make sure it's export quality, because there's like two different quality standards. I don't know, like Meghla, would you say that's true for India as well, like export quality?
Yeah, absolutely. That is true for India for sure. There is, export quality and they're sometimes sold in the domestic market at a premium.
Exactly.
And that's, And that's the reason we also advise people when they source from India to source from export experienced suppliers and not suppliers that cater to the domestic market, because the standards of the domestic market are very different.
Good point. Okay, excellent. So let's keep going forward. So we talked about wooden products as well. So wooden products, yes, that's strong in India.
Can I just add there, Gary, that there are some really different woods that you get, like mango wood is something that is basically only from India. It's made from the mango tree, which only lives about 15 years. So it's not like you're killing 100-year-old trees for the wood. It is sort of once the mangoes finished, the trees are sort of finished their use, and then mango wood is made. And that is an absolutely beautiful wood, very lightweight. It's good for shipping. And very different. So if people are wanting to get away from the normal like acacia wood, I mean, India does do acacia as well, but I just think mango wood is something that's can be unique. Once again, it's a point of difference because you're not going to get that from China.
What would be like a good example of something made out of mango wood?
Oh, how long have you got? Anything, bowls, anything made out of wood, like it can be bowls, serving trays, platters, anything really that you can think, anything that's made in wood can be made out of mango wood. And
what's like the point of differentiation besides the name? I mean, does it look different? Is it more durable, or is it more eco-friendly?
How would you describe it, Meghla? Well, it's obviously eco-friendly, but how would you describe the look? It's like
Well, the grain is very beautiful. I mean, you have to have an eye for, natural wood, of course. If you're looking for MDF or other kinds of finishes, then that's a different thing. But if you are looking for that natural look, then mango wood has a very beautiful grain, very beautiful color. It's a softer wood, so it's easier to work with. It's lighter than other types of wood as well. And it lasts longer. It holds less moisture as well. It dries fast. And I think that's probably
Okay. Excellent.
You need to see it. You need to Google it and have a look, people.
Yeah. I'm
there
trying
you
to
go.
Google it.
There we have it. CJ has a piece of mango wood
there.
there.
You go. There you go. Thank you.
Lovely. That's really nice.
All right. Perfect. Okay. So let's get to some of the pre-submitted questions as well. The number one question that everybody had was how to find suppliers in India. How do we find suppliers? Because obviously Alibaba isn't as effective for India. So how should sellers find suppliers? CJ, you want to take a shot at this?
Sure. When I started my Amazon business, I actually took me a while. I actually took a course. I learned how to select products. And then you get to the point where you're like, where am I going to find this product? And it's easy enough to find suppliers. You just Google it. You can go on to Alibaba. There are some Indian suppliers there. You can find them, but who are these people? It's pretty scary sending, wiring some guy in India that you've never met $4,000. And that's when I found Meghla's company, indiasourcing.net. I'm giving you guys a plug, Morgan. They vet suppliers. So you can go onto their website and find suppliers. Meghla and Margaret know these people personally. They've been to the factories themselves. These people are trustworthy. They do a good job. And that's a fantastic way to find suppliers. What was a total game changer for me was going on the India trip last October, meeting suppliers in person, seeing products, touching them, feeling them, talking to the suppliers about what they are, how they're made, and getting ideas from products that they're selling to do other products. Fantastic experience. I almost didn't go on that trip. I can't tell you how glad I am that I went. It was truly a game changer. It changed my business. So if anybody is thinking about going on the trip in October, I don't work for Meghla and Margaret at all. You can message me and we can talk. You can ask me questions. It was fantastic. So that's the best way that I have found to find suppliers. If you can't do it in person, use their website and use the vetted suppliers that they know.
Excellent. Meghla, can you, or Mara, can you tell us more about the website? Like, what can people get from that?
Yeah, so the website is sort of similar to Alibaba, where you can find suppliers, contact them directly and start conversations. But what we've tried to do is curate the suppliers that we have on the website. So there aren't like thousands of suppliers that you'd find on Alibaba, but there are maybe, I think, about 200 or so now that we have. But we are vetting these suppliers really, really carefully. And there are three things that we check. One, that they are a legitimate company with all of the proper licenses and everything to operate. And then secondly, we check that they are a manufacturer. So they have some sort of facility where they're either manufacturing the entire process from start to finish, or they're at least doing some processes in-house. There are no trading companies on the website. And thirdly, we ensure that they are export experienced, because as I mentioned earlier, it's very important to source from export experienced companies when you are buying from India. So those are the three things that we really focus on. And we also remove suppliers. I mean, sometimes there are issues with product, and we then just without hesitation just remove suppliers from the website too. So it's a very curated list of companies.
And I think too, Meghla, if people can't find what they're looking for on the site, we now have a done-for-you sourcing service. So if people are struggling, they can contact us and we can then get our team to find some suitable suppliers for them and move forward that way. So that's very good. If people are time poor and can't get to India or don't have the time to, you know, go through all the information we have.
And Meghla and Margaret are trustworthy. You know, this is their business. If someone comes to them and says, hey, I want to order some silicone something, they're going to say, you know what? You should go to China because we're not going to find a good supplier to do that in India.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I've attended India sourcing trip as well in 2019. Some of you guys know, and I wrote a blog, trip report about it. If anyone's interested, we're happy to share that. But I had a very similar experience to CJ. It's very, it was very eye-opening just being able to witness like all of the products, to see them. And we even went to a couple of factories, so we saw, how the sausage is made and, like all of the people and the equipment. And, there's a lot of differences, unique type of handmade products that are, very hard to find in China. And the other thing is there's less, copycatting. So I'm not saying that there's less, there's no factories that's going to steal your idea, but there's less of that, at least for now. Things are changing, but it's less likely that your factory is going to turn around and sell your product on Amazon to compete against you. Okay. So definitely check out the website, guys, indiasourcing.net. Okay. So let's keep going. We also had some additional questions about concerns about quality control, consistency. Some people were wondering about like the quality compared to China. Who can share more about that?
Well, so quality, regardless of where you're sourcing from, you as a buyer need to manage quality. And quality is a very subjective term. What you need to do is really communicate your requirements, your specifications very clearly to the supplier. And then, the supplier needs to execute on your specifications in according to what your requirements are, right? So I feel that, of course, you get really good quality products from China, and sometimes you don't because there's maybe miscommunication or because maybe they're trying to save a buck here or there. That's something that also happens a lot in China, where suppliers are trying to, because there's so much competition in China for different products, they're always trying to maybe cut costs or cut corners somewhere. So that's also why sometimes you see quality issues happen in China. Not saying there aren't quality issues in India, but we feel that suppliers are more eager to work with you together to resolve any quality issues if there are. They put in the effort to try and understand, okay, what is it that they are sort of lacking, or how can they improve the product to overall bring a better product to the market. And maybe CJ, you can add something to that as well as you are sourcing.
I feel that suppliers in India are more interested in having a long-term relationship with people like myself, whereas I have found suppliers in China just want the order. And that's it. And if you reorder, great. But I've found that Indian suppliers, they care about knowing me. How's your kids? This, happy Diwali. They're much more looking for a one-on-one personal relationship with me, and they want to work with me long-term, and they want to please me. And I didn't find that in China.
Very interesting. All right. Excellent. Okay, let's keep going. I know we have several more questions. And what about we talked about specific products that can be sourced from India. So next is details about shipping and freight forwarding. So logistically, like how does that compare with China, and in terms, and if you guys can offer some insights?
Yeah, okay. It is different, obviously, to China. There's not as many ports. I mean, you know, China has ports virtually in every hub around. You will find in India, the main port is Nhava Sheva, which is at Mumbai. So all the most of the products that are manufactured go either mainly by road or they can go by rail down to Nhava Sheva port to be shipped over to, if it's the US or the UK, everything would still leave from there. And what most people probably watching here are selling in the US, so I'll talk about the US. So shipping time from the port, once your goods reach the port, so I usually allow 3 or 4 days for my goods to get from my factory to the port and then onto the ship. You know, it takes a couple of days to get, you know, clear customs and get sort of bonded into the ship. Once it's on the water, it takes about 21 to 23 days to go to the East Coast. So we always suggest, if you're sourcing from India, give up going into California for a couple of reasons. The time frame is about 12 days longer if to go into California because the ship actually goes the other way. And the other reason is you'll find that port charges and congestion is nowhere near as big over on the East Coast, because obviously everyone from China is going into California. There's a lot more fees on containers and clearances and things in California. So that's a couple of reasons why you wouldn't sort of go to California. And if you're doing oversized, most of the oversized warehouses are also on the East Coast. Air freight is the same. It can virtually go from Delhi or wherever, it'll get flown into anywhere in America. So your air freight, you won't find much difference, but your sea freight, you do find it's just, you must know where you want to ship to. And I think that's probably the biggest thing with shipping. Anyone think of anything else we need to add?
What about the costs, Mark?
Oh, look, costs at the moment, I think it's only about $2,000 a container. It isn't, it has, the shipping has come obviously well down from what it was when it went up 2 years ago with every country. But no, shipping costs are no more expensive, I don't believe, than going from China. So it's quite economical. I think you just got to be more organized. I think you've got to get yourself well and truly organized. And I'd say one thing I'll add here is people moving from China to India always say, oh, but it takes so long to get something manufactured. Yes, it does, because it's all handmade. Most of the products are handmade products, so you can't sort of press the button in China. It happens, you know, they'll spew out 2,000 of yours and 2,010 other clients overnight, whereas ours, the man sits and makes every single one hand by hand. And I mean, we've been to many factories and seen this happen. So you've got to allow a lead time of about, if it's something made out of metal and wood that's a little bit complex, it can be, you know, 60 to 90 days manufacturing time. So the first order will take you a long time, but once you get running, you then just need to look forward, plan and go, I'm going to run out of these in 90 days, I need to order right away. So I think it's just that little bit of more planning, which people do find a little bit hard to get used to. But I mean, I moved from China after 12 months to India, and I've never had a problem because I just look forward and think, right, what do I need? I talk to my manufacturer and say, if I need these, when do you need to start them? And they'll say, right, I'll start them on this date so they're ready for then. So you just got to work with your manufacturer as well.
Okay. Excellent. And what about in terms of understanding and navigating customs, including invoices, GST numbers? There were several people that had questions about this as well.
So as an importer, you don't need to worry about all of that, because all you need to do is have a really good customs broker and a freight forwarder. And we do have a company that we recommend in our network that we've been using ourselves, that we recommend to other people. They are, an established freight forwarder in India, so they will manage all of the documentation on this side. And they're also a customs broker in the US, so they manage everything over there as well. So all you need to do is just send them an email and say that, hey, my goods are ready on this day. These are the specifications, these many cottons, this is the volume, these are the numbers, and then they coordinate with the supplier for all of the documentation. So as an importer, you don't need to, provide any documentation for exports from India. Even certifications, it's the manufacturer's responsibility to give certifications. Of course, the mandatory ones, because without those certifications, the product will not cross, customs in the US. So the mandatory ones, the supplier coordinates with the freight forwarder to manage all of those.
And I think too, one thing is different. Most people using China tend to do ex works. We recommend doing FOB, because what will happen then is it's your manufacturer's responsibility to get all the paperwork to the shipper at the port. So you're not chasing all that, or chasing another, road transport guy who you don't know to get the goods to the port or whatever. So I think FOB is much more cost effective, and then none of the paperwork becomes, your problem. If you do X works, then the paperwork can become a bit of a problem if your manufacturer doesn't do it properly. So that's just a little tip that I think is worth using.
Yeah,
Also,
that's a
most
great
suppliers
tip.
in India would not do DDP. Like a lot of suppliers in China would just do DDP. But the problem with DDP is that, it's not recommended in China as well, especially if you're well established. And only the smaller guys, smaller Amazon sellers who are just starting out, they do DDP. But typically, you work with a freight forwarder separately so that there's transparency in terms of the costs and timelines for your shipping. And, your supplier is just manufacturing your products. They're not doing your shipping. So we'd always recommend work separately with a freight forwarder. You don't want your supplier to be, adding costs to your freight as well. And also with DDP, the customs duties are not very clear. So you really don't know how much you're paying, because actually customs duties, you only know once the product hits customs. That's when you know what the actual customs duties are going to be. So there's no way that anybody can determine customs duties even before, they leave the country. But in China, of course, they sort of have this. They have consolidated shipments where all of the products are imported under, a one company. And so that's another thing, actually. If you're using DDP, sometimes, most of the time, you're not the importer of record. So in case Amazon asks you, okay, where did you get this product from? And how did you import it into the US? You don't have any records of that.
Okay, excellent. Let's move on to the next question about profitability. What are some ways to determine and ensure profitability when sourcing from India?
Look, I think the biggest thing is negotiating with your supplier, but having a price in mind. Look, I don't go to my supplier and say, I want the best price, or I'll just say to them, I've done my research on this product, and if I can't buy it from you for $10, it's no point me doing it, because I cannot make enough profit on that product. So I find, instead of going to a supplier and saying, I want to make this, and in your mind you think, oh, I want it for $3, and he comes back at $8, and you've spent, a month and he's made a sample, and all that's wasted time. So I think being transparent, a lot of people say, I don't want to tell him what I want to pay, because then he'll try and rip me off. But that's not like that in India. So I just think it's better to be upfront with them, tell them what you can afford, and then maybe say to them, but look, if I come back and I order another 2,000 or whatever in the future, I keep reordering, can we negotiate the price down? Because obviously the more they're manufacturing, and once they've done all that work the first time, they can give you a much better price. So I think it's all about, India is all about relationships and honesty. And I think that way you can, get the best profitability by being, upfront with your supplier. And, I think if you say to them, oh, I want it $2 cheaper, what are they going to do? They've got to make the material thinner. They've got to make something cheaper. So, you've got to decide what quality you want. Do you want a reasonable quality product, or do you want something thin and cheap and nasty? So, you get what you pay for wherever you are. So I think if they tell you at a certain, quality, or you've seen something, or they've sent you the sample, and that's the quality you want, they can't really, take $2 or something off that product, because, it won't be there in the first place, because they'll be trying to get your business on that first price.
And I never feel
Excellent.
that suppliers in India are ever trying to squeeze me. I always feel that they usually will offer a very fair price. And when I'm launching a new product, I always feel that my profit is in my product selection. So when you're discussing with a supplier, this, I want to make this, and you're discussing the price, you have to figure out how much do you think you can sell it for. That's where I'm making my profit. I can't buy something for too high of a price and then try to cut corners on freight or try to cut corners on packaging. You're making your profit when you're selecting your product. And I have found that Indian suppliers are very honest about, and here's the thing, this is why I trust Indian suppliers. I can get 5 quotes for the same product from 5 different Indian suppliers, and they're all going to be pretty similar. So.
Nice. Great tips. Yeah, I like what you said. Your profit is in your product selection. And, in supply chain, I've been working in supply chain for over a decade. They say the real money is made not on the selling, but actually on the buy side, right? In the sourcing, the procuring, right? So like the product selection, finding the right supplier, negotiating the right price. That way you can, have a good foundation for your profitability to grow.
And if the numbers don't work when you're selecting your product and you're talking to a supplier, then let it go. Move on.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. You can't ram a square peg into a round hole.
That's true. Okay.
And
Meghla, any
that we
tips on
didn't talk about
negotiations?
Yeah. I was just going to say MOQs. We haven't talked about MOQs, and that's another advantage sourcing from India, especially when you're doing handmade products, that the MOQs are very low. And Indian suppliers have what is known as MOV, just minimum order value. And that means that you can basically order multiple SKUs and they might have a minimum order value that they want you to meet. So $5,000, $8,000, but they might say that, okay, you can mix and match and have different SKUs, in that amount. And that is advantageous because you don't have to invest a lot of money into one SKU. You can spread your risks over different products. And in terms of MOQs, typically for the kinds of products that we see Amazon e-commerce sellers sourcing, which are handmade products, metal, wood, the MOQs are, 100, 200 pieces, which is like not possible to do in China at all. So that's another advantage in India, low MOQs. And
in terms of minimum order values, MOVs, what is like a benchmark that sellers can have in mind? Typically $5,000, $8,000. Is that for one order or is that for multiple? Yeah, that's per order. No, that would be per order. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the product as well. I mean, some suppliers would go, would say that $3,000 or so, but typically we've seen 5 to 8.
Yeah, okay. And I find that works well. I actually have one of my brands. I have 9 SKUs in it, and I started off with 8 SKUs, but I could start off and do those 8 SKUs, and I could just pick 200 of this, 100 of that, whatever I wanted, as long as I spent $8,000 on my first order. And now I don't have to spend. I can just go back and say, oh, this one's a bit low. Can I just get 100 of those to top up my fast seller, put that in with the shipping when I'm doing a big order of something else. So it works really well. And once you get that relationship going, you'll be surprised what the manufacturers will do for you.
And I have a reorder that I just placed with a supplier in India for a product that I've been selling for a while that's selling pretty well. And I worked with him on a new product idea. And because he's already shipping these other products that I know that are selling, I was like, do me a favor, can you make me 200 of these and include it in the shipment? And that way I don't have a huge investment on a new product. So if it doesn't sell, I'm not out that much money. So he's just adding it in. And that's the other thing too, is that a lot of these suppliers, they do such a variety of things that you can, it's like a really good supplier is a secret weapon, because if they're already doing something and their quality and you already have that relationship, you can start working with them on new products and not do huge quantities. Because if you're doing, a new product and you're working with a new supplier and you've got this MOV of $5,000, if it doesn't sell, you haven't really done your research very well. But if it doesn't sell, you're out all that money. So. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. I wanted to address, one of the other big questions and also have a chance to introduce the India sourcing trip. And I feel like by now, if you really want to get started sourcing from India, if you understand the advantages and if your product makes sense, like sourcing from India, where does someone start?
CJ, where did you start? What do you recommend people?
With the trip,
No,
Or
start
sourcing from India. Like, what advice would you give to like the 30 people in the room right now that are watching? Like, they're interested, they want to get started. What should they do?
I would go onto the India Sourcing Net website, and a lot of the YouTube videos that you guys have done were so helpful for me before I had met the two of you, Marg and Meghla, and see the variety and the quality of the products, and see if that fits into the concept that you want to start selling in. And go on the
Excellent.
trip. I'm telling you, go on the trip.
Yes.
It was so great. I loved every minute of it.
What was the best part?
You know, a lot of people say, oh, Bollywood night and the food and Taj Mahal. For me, I went, and those things were great, but for me, it was a business trip, and going to the Delhi fair changed my business. So that was the best part of the trip for me.
How did it change your business?
And I made friends. How did it change my business? Meeting, like I said earlier, meeting the suppliers and seeing things in person and speaking to them. And I just came back with so many ideas for new products. I couldn't wait to come home and do research on all the products that I saw. So yeah, it was great. I can't speak highly enough about it.
Excellent.
Worth every penny.
Excellent. So Meghla and Mark, please tell us more about the trip. And I know you have a video as well, if people want to, kind of see what they can expect.
Yes, why don't we see the video first? Okay, this is a recap video of one of the previous trips that we had done. So we do a full day India sourcing conference where we actually have experts, sourcing experts, shipping experts, lawyers, talk about different aspects of sourcing from India. Cultural sensitivities is also a topic. Then we have all of the vetted service providers under one roof. So this conference is basically everything you need to source from India, whether it's knowledge, connections, information. And this is the Delhi fair. This is maybe I shouldn't talk because there's music also. Can you hear me over the music?
The music is a little loud.
Okay.
Maybe if you want to lower the music, you can speak over it.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that better? Okay.
Yes.
So this is Delhi Fair. There are about 3,500 exhibitors. Oh, that was CJ there. This is This is an export focused fair. So that's one of the biggest advantages of this fair. All of the suppliers, exhibitors are export focused. There are no domestic focused suppliers. Then we have a lot of, e-commerce Amazon experts and sourcing experts who join the trip, and we do mastermind sessions in the evenings where we talk about, hey, what did you find at the fair? And just share ideas, and we have a lot of fun. So I thought this was a very fun night. And then we also visit factories. So this is the city of Moradabad that I was mentioning earlier, where there's a lot of metal and wooden products. So we actually visited the factories to see how products are manufactured. And this time we're doing a trip to Jaipur as well. So there'll be 2 trips, one to Moradabad, one to Jaipur. And see how welcoming suppliers are. They're giving everyone garlands. And our partner, Kevin, he's very enterprising. And so he was actually working on some of the products over there. It was a lot of fun. Then we do some cultural activities as well. So we visit Taj Mahal, which is, of course, one of the 7 wonders of the world. We also do some charity. So we donate some money to an organization. And this is a famous Bollywood night where you can dress up in Indian clothes and dance to Bollywood music.
Yeah. Love it. I remember when I went, like they put like the headdress on me.
Yeah.
That for Bollywood night, that was very cool. Okay,
Absolutely.
excellent.
Yeah. I mean, there are three
so you
aspects
guys,
of the trip, right? There's learning,
yeah.
sourcing, and cultural activities. Those are the three aspects. And I should also mention that this is an all-inclusive trip. We take care of everything, starting from the hotel to food, transportation. We even give you SIM cards. And basically all you need to do is arrive at the Delhi airport. And from there on, you're taken care of. We have somebody at the airport to pick you up, take you to the hotel, and manage everything. And if you can read Telegram, which is sort of, if you don't know, it's an app like WhatsApp. If you can read messages, then that's it. I mean, that's all you need to do, and you'll actually get, tips. Also, we do a lot of pre-trip webinars. So we help prepare you for the trip. We advise on, visa, flights, cultural sensitivities, what to pack. So we do about 4 or 5 pre-trip webinars, and then we also do post-trip webinars to help you follow up, with suppliers after the show.
Excellent. Tell us the dates, please, Meghla.
So the dates are October 10th to the 17th, and then the factory visits to Jaipur and Moradabad are from the 17th to the 19th. So that's an optional additional trip if you do want to do those factory visits. Another thing I should mention is that right before India sourcing trip, we have a 2-day e-commerce conference that is being held in Delhi, and attendees of e-commerce of India sourcing trip can attend that e-commerce conference for free. So you just need to arrive 2 days before the trip to attend that conference. And we've got a lot of international speakers at the conference who are going to be talking about how to, it's all focused on increasing your sales, your e-commerce sales at a global level. The conference is mostly for India-based sellers, but all of the content, of course, is relevant for anybody selling from anywhere in the world, because we're all talking about how to do e-commerce exports, how to sell on Amazon.com. And we've got people like Mike Jackness, David Bryan coming from the US. We've got Sean Hart, hopefully Gary too. We're still discussing that. We've got Shopify.
I gotta work out some my travel schedule.
Yes.
But yeah.
And we've got, Amazon Global Selling is going to be there, Shopify, eBay, a lot of logistics companies as well, service providers. So yeah, that's an added bonus. I mean, you pay hundreds of dollars to attend a conference like this in another country, but over here it's absolutely free.
Excellent. All right. If you're interested, I dropped the link in the chat, www.indiasourcingtrip.com. You can get all the details, and we have a special coupon code for you guys. Just enter in the code 8020 for a $300 discount. So I'd like to thank Meghla for that. And just to be transparent, I am an affiliate of India Sourcing Trip. I mean, I've attended this trip myself, so I can vouch that this is a very legit trip. I definitely, as you've seen, you can get hands-on with products, you can get samples, you can witness the factories, you can build relationships. So I think for anyone interested, it will really jumpstart your India sourcing. So definitely check that out in indiasourcingtrip.com. We have a couple of quick questions before we end. I'd like to address. Michelle asks, do you have a list of the kinds of manufacturers you are visiting?
Do you mean factories? I think she means factories, right?
I believe so, Michelle.
Yeah,
yes, factories. Yes.
So we do have a fair idea of the types of manufacturers that we're visiting, but what we also do is we customize the trip. So once we have all of the attendees for, Moradabad and Jaipur, we're going to ask you guys, hey, what are the kinds of products that you want to source? And of course, we know the categories that those cities are good at. But if nobody wants to source a particular category, we won't go to that factory, right? So we are very flexible in terms of customizing the trip. In fact, we can also, when we travel to these cities, you don't have to necessarily travel with the group. We can also set up appointments for you separately. And you might say that, hey, I want to do this product that maybe nobody else in the group is interested in. So we can schedule find and vet factories for you for that specific product, and then help you, reach that factory and come back to the hotel safely.
Can I say something? It
Yes,
was really
CJ.
great was you can go on this trip and not know anything about sourcing and come back with contacts with suppliers, with inspection company, with freight company. It is like one-stop shop. And what was really great was that anyone who's interested in going should not feel intimidated whatsoever. There were people on the trip when I went in October who are making millions, they're selling millions of dollars a year. And there were people who had never even launched one single product. So this trip is for everyone. That's all I can say.
Excellent.
And we had some not Amazon sellers as well. So traditional importers and wholesalers. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And not,
Anne
not all,
asked,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead, CJ.
I was just going to say, in the mastermind, the coaches are not just all Amazon sellers. So there was the wholesale. There was someone, a big Etsy seller. It's an e-commerce sourcing trip. It's not just for Amazon. This trip is truly for everyone.
Yeah.
And we encourage communication, and we encourage everyone to mingle together and share ideas. Like that's the ethos of the trip. So you won't find people sitting in one corner and just, or the coaches especially sitting in one corner and just talking to themselves or talking among themselves. So everybody is, sharing information and freely answering questions that you might have. So they're very, very accessible, unlike some of the other trips.
Okay, excellent. Anne had a question. Can you get samples at the fair?
So usually on the last day of the fair, you can get samples. And even during the fair, I mean, if they think that you're a very serious buyer and you're, likely to place an order, and if they do have additional products, they might be able to give you a sample. But generally they don't during the fair because they have a limited number of products. But usually on the last day, and we could go back on the last day as well. I mean, we visit the fair for 3 days, but it's actually a 5-day fair. But you can also ask them to ship samples to you at the hotel, because we're not at the fair, but we're still in India at that time. So that they can do that as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay, excellent. Any other last questions, guys, before we close out? We are already past the end of the hour. I'll drop the URL in the chat again if you guys are interested. And meanwhile, what is the best way to connect if people want, excuse me, for people that want to learn more?
So we have a Facebook group in case anyone's interested. You can search for sourcing from India, Amazon FBA private label. Join our Facebook group. We share a lot of resources there. We've also got an ebook. If you go to indiasourcing.net/ebook, that's a really good way to, get an understanding of what types of products are sourced in India. So this is, or are made in India. I'm just going to drop the link over here. So that's indiasourcing.net/ebook. And this is all about what products are made in India. And you can also email us at info@indiasourcing.net.
Okay, excellent. Do we have time for one quick question? Michelle, that I was late to the webinar. Based on what a retailer charges online for a certain product, I can deduce what they would pay for cost of goods and landed costs. I talked to a factory and didn't get anywhere near the same landed cost. Thoughts?
Well, it really depends on the product, and it's sort of like a case on a case-to-case basis. You've got to evaluate that. What were the materials used? Was the material different? What was the process? So I think, Michelle, if you want to drop me an email at info@indiasourcing.net, we can discuss this a little bit and see if we can help you or try to identify why the price was up.
Yeah, that would be the best way. Okay. Last question. Casey asks, what's the best way to Delhi from LAX, from Los Angeles?
Well, there are lots of different options. I think just go online, search for flights.
Are there direct flights, or do you have to transfer?
From LAX,
I don't think there's a direct flight from LA. There's an American Airlines direct flight from New York.
New York, yes.
It's only been around for 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm almost.
There are lots of different options. Yeah, there are flights that come from Europe. There are flights that come from the Middle East. lots of different options.
I think maybe you can transfer through Hong Kong or Singapore or Japan. I mean, depending on which airlines you prefer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Depending on where you're coming from.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Meghla, Marg, and CJ for this super valuable insight about sourcing from India. I'm very excited and hope people can join us, hopefully, on the trip in October. Definitely check out indiasourcing.net to get, what's that?
You'll have a blast, trust me.
Yes. Yeah. And one last thing. Meghla and the team are like super organized when it comes to the whole experience, from the airport pickup to the food to the Taj Mahal. I mean, you guys will really get like, the white glove VIP experience, because I've gone through it. So just one more, plug for the trip. So really hope you guys can take advantage of that. All right. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. Have a great night. We'll see you guys at the next session. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Gary.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.